Concerned about aging? Focus on this very important organ. This is Dr. Jeetan Bendor for Physician Perspectives. So, a phenotypic and dramatic change that consumes us as we add numbers to our age is our inability to physically do things that we did when those age numbers were smaller. We're talking about aging. And phenotypic means our interaction, that is as humans, our genotype with the environment, food, sleep, everything around us. Here is a typical illustration of aging. Images that go through our minds when we talk about or think about aging. And what we also see in this image is that our mobility gets hit as we age. Yes, I did mention motility gets hit. So why did I say that? That is because we belong to the kingdom Animalia. And one of the most distinguishing factor that is a difference between us and plants is that we are motile. In a very famous 80s sitcom called Cheers, a character called Cliff explains to Norm, a herd of buffalo can only move as fast as the slowest buffalo, and when the herd is hunted, it is the slowest and the weakest ones at the back that are killed first. Now this is natural selection. This is good for the herd as a whole because the general speed and the health of the whole group keeps improving by the regular killing of the weakest members. My take from this is that as we age, our mobility and motility reduces to such a bad extent or such a poor state that we get left behind. And we wouldn't want that to happen, would we? Papers that I present are available in the public domain. So in this paper titled What is Aging? I found a very interesting definition of aging. And it goes, a persistent decline in the age-specific fitness components of an organism due to internal physiological deterioration. To me, this fitness component deterioration means reduction in motility or mobility. I truly believe that mobility is our superpower. The minute we lose our mobility or when it starts deteriorating, we lose our superpower. And when that happens, we start aging. And the more the mobility deteriorates, the more or the faster we age. You should have guessed by now this organ that I'm talking about here that is central to the aging process. Yes, that is the skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscle is central to functional capacity, which means that during adult life, when we have a highest possible level of function, our skeletal muscle is behind us, keeping us going, keeping us abreast. And when that functionality drops because of deterioration of skeletal muscle, old age or aging sets in. And that aging process makes us dependent and makes us disabled. So I would rather keep this curve flat and keep it flat forever. Why not? As long as we live. And not let it deteriorate like this, and deteriorating like this would definitely ensure dependence and, being disabled. So this typical illustration of aging has now become a typical illustration of declining mobility. So mobility, our superpower, is made possible by skeletal muscle. So it makes perfect sense to keep our skeletal muscle up and running and optimal so that we can keep aging under control and keep it at bay probably forever. So when we talk to professionals or to patients about keeping the skeletal muscle up and running and optimal, the terminology that we use when that doesn't happen is something called as sarcopenia. Sarx in Greek is flesh and penia is loss. Now typically this was first described as a loss of muscle in seniors or older people, and this definition has still stuck on for a very long time. Here is a paper published in 2019, one of the newer papers where people have tried to redefine sarcopenia. So this is the European census or consensus on definition and diagnosis of sarcopenia. A good paper on the diagnosis, especially the modalities that can be used to measure muscle mass and muscle strength. But what doesn't come out of this paper, what doesn't jump out of the paper for me is that the message that sarcopenia can be extended, or the muscle mass and strength issue should be extended to the younger generation as well. Because we need to catch this challenge when people are in the younger, who are younger, so that aging can be addressed earlier at time and not when aging is already progressed. So perhaps a new terminology needs to be used to define this muscle challenge. I would like to use a word or new terminology, hyposarcosis. And hyposarcosis would mean low muscle strength and low muscle mass in humans in all stages of life, whether they're young or old. Now one doesn't wake up overnight aged, right? You don't wake up at 45 or 60 and you're all of a sudden aged. So aging process has already begun or started somewhere earlier in life, and attempts have been made to look into those processes rather. And so here's a paper published in 2019, and the authors have looked at proteins that could be linked to aging. So they looked at the proteins in blood and looked at the results of these protein changes in blood that can reflect aging. So the authors looked at blood and proteins in blood in 4,263 healthy individuals aged 18 to 95. Here are the results. Very interesting. The authors report the emergence of 3 waves of aging as young as 34. The next surge is at 60 years of age and the third at 78. So wouldn't it make sense to go and look into aging before the age of 34 years? So there are a lot more details in this typical illustration of declining mobility or aging. In order not to reach an age or a stage where mobility is really compromised, we need to start earlier than 34. And that is where skeletal muscle really comes into the picture. So we really need to look into our skeletal muscle health. Retain that superpower, we need to make sure that our skeletal muscle is up and running and optimal, and not get it into a stage of hyposarcosis, that is low muscle mass and strength, which will enhance aging. Thank you.